A Stack Fury FC is headed your way this Friday on UFC Fight Pass. And, there are a lot of things to look forward to at Fury. You have athletes that are really on the bubble of getting into the UFC, and they promoted more athletes to the UFC than I can even count over the last couple of years. But there's something else on Fury that I like to watch, and that's athletes that are in their first, second, or third professional fights, because now with UFC Fight Pass, we can watch all of these athletes from basically the grassroots of their career all the way to the octagon. And a name you should keep your eye on is Livv Bierley. She joins me now. She's a part of this Fury FC card on Friday night. Liv, I think third pro fight, if I'm correct.
Third pro fight. They
And
always say third time's a charm.
I mean, so far so good. You did drop your first professional fight via split decision. No shame in that, but you rallied. You got a win. Now you're trying to do it again. You're already on the radar of people in the know for fighters to keep an eye on. Do you feel any pressure from that?
No, I think there's nobody that's ever going to put more pressure on me than I am on myself. And I'm confident in the work that I've put in leading up to this. So this is just kind of where I get to have some fun. And to me, like I enjoy being out there. So no matter what, even split decisions, I'm having a great time out there.
Chuck Liddell used to say that the work was always done in the gym and the reward and treat was the fight itself. It sounds like you feel the same way.
Yeah, and I did an interview not too long ago, but one of the things that I think separates me from a lot of athletes is I'm one of those weird people that I love the journey and the process as much as I do, the thing that people get to see. I love to work out. I love to push my body to limits and the weight cut and all of that in some twisted way I enjoy. It's not just the 5, 15 minutes that I'm in the cage. It's every moment of bleeding, sweating, and crying that leads up to that moment that I enjoy too.
I mean, that's the thing about combat sports. Like, it very much is a lifestyle. It's not something that you can do part time, at least not if you want to try to get to the highest level. And it sounds like fighting and mixed martial arts very much is your lifestyle.
It absolutely is. I'm always in a gym, whether it's a weightlifting gym or an MMA gym. I actually, but that was what I was doing prior to fighting, as I was working for LA Fitness and personal training. So it's kind of been in my blood since before I ever found fighting. I was always in a gym pushing my body, and now it's just kind of that next level of physical chess or pushing your body to whatever it can do. So I'm just excited to continue the process.
Now, women fighting at a high level, whether it be on the regional scene or in the UFC, it's not as much of a novelty as it used to be. However, every time I talk to a female athlete, the fundamental question remains the same, because it's still sort of out of the ordinary for any woman to pursue a career like this. But why fighting? What drew you to combat sports?
So to be completely honest, I had never done any martial art of any capacity prior to just jumping right into MMA. And I didn't, when I first started training, it was for self-defense. I wanted to
Okay.
learn how to protect myself. I'd had a few situations starting in college and then during the pandemic where I just didn't feel safe. And I wanted to make sure that I at least took the measures necessary to make sure that in worst case scenario, I knew enough self-defense to disengage and get out of any bad situation. But me being the competitive person that I am, I've played sports since I was 2.5 years old. I was a gymnast when I first started, did that up until I was 16, went on to play college basketball. So I've always been in either team sports and individual sports, but there was something different about MMA. And I think that when you are addicted to testing your body's limits and just seeing like how much of a dog you really are and what you're capable of doing, and I'm proving it to me more than anybody else. It's always great to like have other people validate that, but it's really proving it to myself that I can do it. And so once, I went to my first MMA practice, got hit right in the face. I realized that like it was a shock, but it was like a shock of adrenaline.
Mm,
And some weird twisted part of me enjoyed it because I knew that a lot of people can't take a punch or would
right.
never willingly subject themselves to it. So for me, there was some kind of like gratification to knowing that like, hey, I can do what a lot of other people can't. And then from there, when the skill sets continue to come with it, the beautiful thing about MMA is it's still evolving. I think that you could do it for years and years and years, and you're never going to even scratch the surface of all the tricks and things that you can string together. So for me, this is like a sport that has no ceiling with progression. And when you're someone who's addicted to forward momentum and getting better and pushing yourself to the limits, that limit just keeps getting further and further down the road. So it's like there's no way that you ever get complacent with that. And I think that's part of what sets my soul on fire when it comes to MMA.
I think about sports and combat sports being sort of like the ultimate sport. If you go back to like the early days of the Olympics, there were really two sports. It was either combat or running, and both are
Yeah.
applicable in life. You either run towards the fight or you run away from the fight. And it seems
Yeah.
like, Livv, you're one of those people that runs towards the fight.
Run towards, yeah. That fight or flight response is definitely fight.
Yeah, not mine. I run the other direction. I try to stay away from it and talk about it from a distance. But like, what about going from like the self defense to like actually applying it in combat sports? What was it that drew you to it to try to defeat another trained human being who has all the skills that you do to try to hurt you?
Yeah, I think again, it was the first moment I got rocked, by another girl that was she was a little smaller than me, but she was getting ready to start or make her pro debut, and it hit me, and I felt the pain registered, but the adrenaline to get her back kind of overrode that.
Okay,
And I think it's like one of the few sports where you can be like just like hold the competitiveness. Like it's the most competitive sport that you can be in. And in basketball, I would always foul out for being too aggressive. But in MMA, you win for being too aggressive. So it
right.
was like, I finally found something that rewarded my, relentless pursuit and my, like I'm just going to be more relentless. I might not be better. I might not be more talented, but I'm not going to give up. I'm going to be more persistent than you are resistant. And I think that the other thing I like about MMA is there's really not that many politics, like coming from high school sports and college sports and team sports and all of that. Like when you're in the cage, it's you and that other person in the cage. Nobody else is saving you. Nobody, you have nobody else to blame. Like it's what you do to get in there. So I think that's part of it. But then just the other side of it is the behind the scenes stuff.
Mm.
I've become like family, brothers and sisters with my teammates because it's different. You sweat with them, you bleed with them, you trust them, and then you share this like bond where other people just don't get what it's like to go through the weight cut and to go through 6 weeks of your teammates just wailing on you while you're cutting calories, but there's just something that connects you and bonds you and it makes you part of like something bigger than yourself, so it's that communal aspect of it as well.
Yeah, let's talk about when the fight actually happens, because you mentioned getting hit in the face and that sort of adrenaline fueling you. Do you still feel that now as a professional fighter, or are you able to, utilize that, but also like combine it with like the fight IQ and the strategy of the game, or are you out there just kind of running on emotion and reaction?
So my pro debut was definitely running on emotion and competitive drive. To be honest, I went 6-0 as an AME and never really got touched. And
Mm,
then 1 minute into my pro fight, she broke my nose. And I was fully aware that it was broke, and it was almost like I abandoned all game plan and strategy. It was, I'm going to prove a point. I'm going to break her face. I'm going to get her back. Obviously, not her, the person, but her, the fighter. And so I kind of fell and died on my own sword with that because that was not the game plan or strategy going into it. And afterwards, my coaches kind of looked me in the eye and were like, "This is the first time you didn't listen, you didn't follow the game plan, and how'd that work out for you?" So I had to kind of do some soul searching and kind of really dig deep because that was the first time I'd ever really been faced with having an emotional reaction in a fight. Then from there, it was, I've learned to, when I do get hit or when I do get to channel that and to stay focused, because I think that energy is the most valuable thing that you have when you're in the cage. And you can spend a lot of energy getting upset, getting frustrated, trying to get her back or prove a point or whatever it might be. But there is a lot of strategy to the sport. And so the more experience that I get, the more that I'm learning that strategy and that fight IQ and kind of like picking and choosing your shots as opposed to I'm just going to come out swinging. But I also know that sometimes coming out swinging, it works for your advantage too. So, but we're always evolving and always adapting. And, the yum yum you see in the cage is going to be a slightly evolved version of the yum yum you saw last time in the cage.
yeah, fair. I was talking to Rich and Eric from Fury about, who to interview from this card and put out there and get people excited. And you were on the top of the list. And I think that is emblematic of like the expectations that people are throwing your way. What are your goals? And like, what do you think the most logical path to those goals are? Like, how long do you want to be, fighting for Fury and what's next?
So I've always been aggressively ambitious, and I think that if you don't, wholeheartedly believe in yourself, then nobody else will. My After my second amateur win, went out and we were celebrating. I might have had a few drinks, but I remember writing on the receipt to the bartender, "Future UFC bantamweight champion." I believed it then. I believe it now. I know that I've got work to do, and I know that it's a journey, but there's no part of me that doesn't see me getting there. I believe it to my very core because I'm willing to put in whatever amount of work is needed to get there. Now, as far as the other part of that question, winning fights, and not just winning fights, let me clarify, finishing fights. I don't ever want to leave it to the judges again. So the next step is for me to finish this fight in 2 days. I'm sure she's ready and I'm sure she's a great opponent, but I'm going to finish the fight. Like, it's not going to go to the judge's decision. And then from there, I would like to get a title fight, whether it's the immediate next one or the one after that. But I don't see why I can't get a call from Dana or an opportunity to be a part of the UFC by the end of this year, start of next. So I'm willing, if the timeline's different, to keep putting in work and doing what I got to do to get there. But I think that it's important to have goals and kind of have a timeline and have a vision, but also be willing to make adaptations along the way.